a question that a lot of buyers ask me: condo versus houses. What are the advantages? What are the myths? And how do I make smart decisions? Thank you, Maria.
First of all, thank you so much for welcoming me again in this beautiful space of B1 Radio. And yes, honestly, we have heard many stories, many myths, many facts, and things related to real estate. And thanks to this space and thanks to you, we are going to solve them here.
So let's dive in.
Yes.
Should I buy a condo? Should I buy a house, Maria?
Exactly. Honestly, depends on what you want, but we'll see. What are the main differences between owning a condo and a single family home in Quebec?
So when you own a single family home, you can do pretty much whatever you want. You don't have to ask your neighbors for permission. There's no rules and regulations of a co-ownership to ask for permissions. You do have to respect the rules and regulations of the city.
Yes.
So you cannot just do anything. But apart from that, you decide at what time you turn off the music. You decide at what time you cut your grass. You decide at what... On the contrary, when you own a condo, you are subject to the rules and regulations of that co-ownership. If you're going to do a renovation, for example, you're going to have to ask for permission to the syndicate of co-owners. If you want to use the gym at 2 a.m. in the morning, probably you're not going to be allowed because there's rules.
I see. But those are both legally and practically that you're saying?
Yes. What I'm saying in terms of the co-ownership is...
Yes.
There's two types of rules when you're in co-ownership. Number one are the rules of the city, which also apply for single family houses. But the ones of the co-ownership are the ones that are created through a notary act and that are written on the co-ownership declaration, and that can be modified in the amendments to the co-ownership declaration, and that can be changed also through the rules and regulations of that co-ownership.
Okay, so now you're talking about a condo.
Yes.
Living in a condo.
Yes.
Okay. Because I always believe that living in a condo is more about living in a small community, in a community.
No, okay, yes. In our countries in Latin America, sometimes we say we live in a condominium.
Yes.
And it can be like houses that are gated.
Yes.
But when we speak about co-ownership, divided or undivided co-ownership in Quebec, it's because there are several owners, and there we have differences. We have divided co-ownerships and undivided co-ownerships. Divided co-ownerships, in a building, there's, let's say, 10 condos. You own your private portion and a share of the common areas. When you're in an undivided co-ownership, you own a percentage of the building. And the rules to finance, to buy, and to sell are completely different when you're in a divided co-ownership versus an undivided co-ownership.
That's interesting. And what are the biggest myths of people that have or about a condo?
The biggest myth is I'm throwing away my money in condo fees. So a lot of people, when they're going to buy, they're going to say, oh, no, but I don't want to throw out money every month by paying condo fees.
It's true.
Right?
But in a reality that probably you can confirm to us, condo fees seem to be very expensive.
Yes, and they are going to get more expensive. But once again, here's the thing. When you're in a co-ownership and you spend money every month, you're not actually losing that money. That money goes towards paying, for example, the insurance of the building.
Yes.
It goes towards a fund called the Contingency Fund. And the Contingency Fund is created so when it's time to change the roof, the windows, the door, there's money there. There's also something that we call the self-insurance fund. And it's if ever we need to use the insurance because there's a water leak, the self-insurance fund is going to have there enough money to pay for the deductible. So you're not throwing the money away with the condo fees. In a house, yes, you do not pay monthly fees, but when it's time to change the roof or when it's time to change the windows, you're going to have to...
That goes out of your pocket.
Right away, 15, 20 grand.
True.
Now, you were talking about why condo fees seem so expensive. And the reason is mainly because the law has changed recently too. And there's a new law called Law 16 that imposes a lot of obligations to the co-ownerships. And one is that they need to prepare for the repairs of the co-ownership or of the building for the next 10 to 20 years. And taking into account the works that have to be done, they have to save. So if the co-ownership was not saving enough money in the past...
So they're thinking ahead,
exactly.
I think. And you know what? Because I've heard stories that because they're doing this, so they're asking you for a big amount of money to pay right away and to be able to cover that set that they have.
Exactly. And the story behind this is that in the past, because co-owners did not want to pay high condo fees, what happened is that the buildings in Montreal started to deteriorate very quickly because the co-ownership were not doing the required works.
Yes.
So that created a lot of water infiltration problems, things like that. So the insurance companies were up to here of paying because co-owners were not maintaining the buildings. So a lot of the buildings in Montreal, and there's many areas where they're very old, very badly maintained. So that's the spirit behind Law 16 that now imposes that every co-ownership has to have a contingency fund, a self-insurance fund, and on top of that, they also need to have what we call the contingency fund study and the asset management plan.
And what is that?
That is a study. The law still has not given a deadline to complete it, but it's coming up soon. And the contingency fund study and asset management plan is that we're going to need to, each co-ownership is going to need to hire a specialized firm to go evaluate the state of the building and give the co-owners a detailed plan of what are the upcoming works, what needs to be done every year, what needs to be done in 5, 10, 15, and 20 years. And it also does a calculation that it's going to tell the co-owners, are you putting enough money in your condo fees? Are you saving enough money to be able to pay for this type of works in the long run? And if you're not, this is going to create a whole bunch of what we call special assessments.
Okay.
So the co-ownerships are going to have to decide if they're going to divide them monthly. So like, let's say, double the condo fees. Or if annually they're going to ask for a special assessment in which one co-owner would probably have to disburse, I don't know, $2,000, $3,000. And I have that example on a small co-ownership in the McGill Ghetto. After they did the contingency fund study and asset management plan, they realized they weren't saving enough for the required works. And each co-owner is paying between $8,000 to $10,000 every year for the next 9 years.
It's true. And they divide it per month. And I want to ask you something that I've heard between this aspect and this situation. What happens if one of the owners of one of the apartments, the units, doesn't pay?
Okay.
Because I've heard, and this has happened because I know people that they have had the syndicate, they have to contact them, that they have to pay more to cover for the person that is not paying.
Exactly. That's unfortunate.
Yes.
But there are legal resources. So when you do not pay your condo fees, you don't think that you can just get away with it.
Yes.
The syndicate of co-owners can put a legal lien on your property and even get to a point to force you to sell to be able to reimburse the co-ownership. And
No.
yeah.
Okay.
And when you sell also, if there's a legal lien, or even if there's not a legal lien, let's say you sell your condo and you own $10,000 of condo fees, the notary from the profits of the sale, one of the first things it's going to pay is the bank. It's going to pay if you owe municipal taxes, if you owe school taxes, and the syndicate of co-owners.
Oof.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And talking about this whole financial point of view, what do you think? Which type of property tends to cost more in the long run?
Once again, it also depends on how well you maintain your property. Let's say that in a condo, you're kind of protected because with your condo fees, they're already maintaining a good, at least the exterior part, the structure. In a house, well, if you don't save enough money and if you do not do the required maintenance, well, you're gonna need to do it in the future. I personally think that houses are more expensive in the long run because you cannot share the cost, for example, of certain repairs with other co-owners like in a building. So, but the house is going to give you a different lifestyle. It's going to give you independence. So it depends. Pick your poison. Pick your poison.
Pick your poison. And how important, and like talking about condos, and now that we took the subject of syndicates and how important they are, how important is the financial health of the syndicate when you're buying a condo, and what should buyers be looking for in the documents?
Look, I'm going to say that before the aesthetics and the beauty of a condo, the most important thing is to buy in a healthy co-ownership.
And how do you know that?
You know it by asking certain documents such as the minutes and the financial statements of the co-ownership for at least the last 3 years. You should also ask for the insurance of the building to know if it's properly evaluated. If it ever burns down, how much is it insured for?
Yes.
And there's some documents that if you work with a real estate agent, the agency that rules how we do transactions has created additional documents such as the RIS form, which is the request of information from the syndicate of co-owners, that in 3 pages is going to summarize how much money you have in the contingency fund. Are there any legal suits? Are there any problems? Is the syndicate registered? Do you have an insurance policy? So there's a lot of things, and I can go on and on and on with things that you're going to have to look for, but it's mainly minutes and financial statements, co-ownership declaration, rules and regulations.
And how important it is to get to know the other owners? Important,
but that's also very important if you're in a small co-ownership, let's say, because you're going to see your neighbors every day. When you're in a building of 150 condos, it's very difficult that you're going to be able. But if you're buying in a small co-ownership, it's very important to know who's going to live with you. And this is in a divided co-ownership. In an undivided co-ownership, it's critical that you know who are your neighbors, because the mortgage is under the name of all the co-owners, because since you don't own your private portion, you own a share of the building.
Yes.
The mortgage is solidary with the other co-owners. So you really need to know who you're getting in bed with.
Oh my God, I'm talking about situations, for example, leakage or damage from a unit, and then you're talking, like it goes into your unit, and you're trying to contact the owner of that unit, and you don't know the person. Or usually what happens is when the owner is renting that unit, what do you do there?
In those cases, when you're in a co-ownership, you go through the co-ownership. let's say you get a leak from your neighbor upstairs.
Yes.
The first thing, ideally, you need to go and tell the co-owner. But let's say you can't reach the co-owner, you have to contact the syndicate right away, and they're gonna manage the situation. So that's a protection that you have.
Yes. Yeah. But for that, I think you need to have a good syndicate, because we have seen stories, and let me tell you, it sounds like a nightmare. Yes. And talking about like the importance of getting to know the owners, how important it is for a condo owner to be involved into the syndicate meetings.
Oh my God, this is a video that I'm gonna post in my social media this week, and is, please, if you own a condo in a co-ownership, don't be lazy. Go to the co-owners meetings. It's 2 to 3 hours maximum once a year. It's the way you're going to know how your building is being managed, how it's being run, where is the money being spent, why are the expenses increasing, are you up to date with the law 16? Please, I always tell, that's like a relationship or a marriage. You don't sign and just go. You are a co-owner with your neighbors. You are in bed with your neighbors. So please don't skip co-owners meeting. Assist. It's only once a year. Please do. Yes. Please do.
And like I said, we hear many stories, and that's how you get to talk to everybody to see and how the syndicate is managing, and it's managing absolutely everything. Because I've heard stories that syndicates ask for money that they're not even using for more. So that's another way to get in touch with them.
You need to read the minutes and financial statements. You need to know and ask in the meetings. Why has the electricity increased this much? Why are we spending? Why are we not saving?
Reparations, even with reparations.
Yeah. Even with the repairs, you're going to have to, you need to know where your money is being spent. So that's why it's very important to go to the co-owners meetings. And it's once a year.
Yeah. It doesn't take much.
Exactly.
And talking about owners, what type of buyers is better suited for a condo, and who is really better to consider to go into a single family home?
So first thing is budget wise. If you have a smaller budget, I'm gonna say go for a condo, because houses, you're rarely gonna find houses at less than, I'm gonna say, outside Montreal, 450,000. Yes. With that budget, you can get a condo. So first of all, it depends on the budget. I am going to say that for condos, single people, couples with maybe one baby, when you have more kids, when there's two families that come together, there's probably, or you have, let's say, 3 kids that are running around and they're young, it's probably better to go to a house. But then again, budget. You have to think about the budget and what budget do you have in order to be able to buy.
And not just that, what about lifestyle factors? Like you say like a bit, but I want to talk more in depth. Like how is the life factor depending on which one is better? If
you travel a lot, if you want convenience, and you don't mind sharing things with other people, go to a co-ownership. For example, for me, it's very difficult to live in a house because I'm always outside. I just lock and that's it. And my garbage, I go to the chute, I throw it away. So it's more convenient, but I have the rules to respect and I have less privacy. For somebody that has a family that's growing up and that needs more independence, or that likes more the independence, I'm going to say that probably a single family house is going to be the best option. Yeah.
And talking about investment, right now here in Quebec, what do you consider best for investment and to put into rent?
Ooh, okay. Houses are not going to go down in price, but investment-wise, if you're going to buy a property to rent out, I would definitely say go for a condo.
Why
and
is that?
the reason is when you buy a house, the house is going to continue to go up in price, so the value is going to stay there. And please don't get wrong what I'm going to say, but when you rent out a house, who's going to live in the house? Most probably a family with kids.
Yes.
So you're probably going to have to invest more money in repairs.
Ooh. Yes.
When you have a condo, it's probably going to be, well, it depends on the size of the condo, but let's say a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom condo. You can get more money price per square foot for a condo. And it's probably people that are not going to have kids, that are going to be single, and that are going to probably not be there all the time. So the investment that you're going to have to make in terms of repairs is going to be less. But condos don't go up in price as much as houses. But if I were to advise somebody, I prefer, if we're talking about condos and houses, I'm going to say condos. Now, if you have the chance to buy a Plex, that is the better investment. So like a duplex, a triplex, a fourplex. But for that, you require a higher budget.
And because you travel a lot through the cities,
Yeah.
which city do you recommend the best to buy those type of properties?
I would definitely say that outside Montreal, you can get better return on the investment for your money. So if we're speaking about the South Shore, I would say municipalities such as Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu, I would say Saint-Hyacinthe, Granby. If we're talking about the North Shore, I'm going to say Saint-Eustache, Sainte-Thérèse, Mascouche, Terrebonne. But what I am basically trying to say is that you're going to get better opportunities outside the core of Montreal. The return on the investment is better. There's also, for example, Sherbrooke. And this is important as an investor. If you're not using a real estate agent, you have to take into account that the return on the investment is how much you're investing and how much you're getting back. And the way you calculate that is with your expenses. With your revenue. So what you're getting in terms of rent minus the expenses. And that's going to give you a net, what we call the net operating income.
Okay.
That if you divide by the price you paid for the property, it's going to give you the return on the investment.
Interesting.
Outside the core of Montreal, you're going to have better return on the investment than inside Montreal. Now, there's neighborhoods that are really interesting in Montreal to invest. But I would definitely...
Do you know the neighborhood?
Yes. There's a neighborhood that I like to invest a lot. It's Côte des Neiges, but it's in a specific area within Côte des Neiges called the Triangle and Midtown. I think that, I've been doing it for some time, and you get really good return on the investment. There's certain areas of Villeray, there's certain areas of Hochelaga Maisonneuve that I think you get great return on the investment.
And talking about investment as well, how important it is for owners to recommend or require renters to have a house insurance or a condo insurance?
I always tell my clients that has to be a must every time you rent. And I have a story. I have some clients that they own a couple of doors and they had been neglecting that fact of the tenants insurance. And since I started taking care of the rentals, they have seen the importance of it. And this is not only important for the owner, but it's also important for the tenant.
Yes.
And the thing is, and tenants many times think that because it's the owner that needs to get the insurance. Yes, the owner insures the property, but if you invite somebody home and that person falls and breaks a leg and sues you, it's not the landlord's insurance that's going to cover. It's your insurance as a tenant.
Interesting.
If you rent and there's a flood, the owner's insurance is going to pay for the repair of the flood. But your furniture, your computer, it's your insurance as a tenant that's going to pay it. So it's very important. And if you don't ask for it as a landlord, your tenant is going to come knock on your door and said, hey, I lost my furniture, and he's going to want you to pay back.
Really? And there's no legal way for you to say no, because it was your responsibility to get, or you as a property owner, you have to require that type of insurance. And if you don't, and something happens, it's up to them.
Well, you can be liable.
Really?
You can be liable. Tenant insurance, tenant liability insurance is not mandatory by law.
Okay.
But you as an owner can make it mandatory for any tenant. So you can say, of course, you're going to have to establish it in the conditions before you sign a lease, and you have to tell your tenant.
Yeah.
But it's not mandatory by law. But I don't rent to anyone any of my properties if they say no to tenant liability insurance. It's not a big expense, and it does cover a lot of things that like I said, insurance, we don't want anything to happen, and we always think they're expensive, but once we have to use them, we're like, thank God I had them.
True. So it's better to consider it every time. And talking about owners, I want to talk about the time of selling. Right now in Quebec or in Montreal, with the rates and the prices, with your expertise, which one do you think sells faster and better? A condo or a house?
A house. A house sells.
You didn't even hesitate.
Oh, no.
A house.
No. The houses sell within days, and the reason is because there's not enough offer of houses for the amount of buyers.
Okay.
So houses sell within a second.
What happens with condos?
Condos do sell well if you price them properly.
Okay.
Condos in Montreal under the $400,000 mark sell within a week. And they sell really, really well if the co-ownership, like we explained, is healthy and it's complying with Law 16. If you have a healthy co-ownership, you're going to sell your condo very, very quick. But I'm going to say under the 400 mark, they sell within a week. But houses is like hot bread.
That's amazing. And talking about buyers, I think I asked you this question before starting the show, but I wanted to know because I heard this in a TikTok from another realtor, and I was like I said to myself, oh, this is a very good thing to keep it as a myth or a fact, because I heard that talking to buyers at the moment to buy, and if you have a business, can you buy a property, a house or a condo under the name of your company?
Yes, you can. Absolutely. You can buy it but the rules that are going to apply when you're going to sell are completely different.
Which are?
So for example, when you buy in your own name and you are occupying the property, which means it's your personal residence, there's no taxes on the capital gain. When you buy under a company, there's always going to be taxes.
And why is it the difference between a company? Like what's happening that is different, even though it's your primary residence?
Well, the company doesn't have a primary residence. The representative of the company might use it as a benefit, but it's not. It can't be considered, because a legal entity like a company cannot have a personal principal residence. But there's other benefits when you buy under a company. For example, you buy under a company and all of the expenses of the property, you can write them off on your taxes. which you can't do with your principal residence unless you have a home office. Okay? So there's a lot of other things here and there, but each of the scenarios has its pros and cons. But I'm going to say that if you are not planning on doing a lot of investments in real estate, well, your principal residence, put it under your name. And because you cannot write off the expenses, as soon as you have some equity on the house, refinance, take that money out and use it to buy another property. And then you can write off all of those expenses. Or you can use that money from the refinancing to make some sort of investments. And depending on the composition of those investments, you can also write off the expense, the interest on the mortgage of that refinancing. I'm getting a little bit complex on that.
You know what? Those are some tips and knowledge that for someone that doesn't have, but we would like to learn about some type of, I don't know, hidden investments, ideas that we can like save some money or grow.
We can speak in other. There's two things that we can speak in another opportunity, and they're called the Smith maneuver and the advanced Smith maneuver. And there's a lot of, look, I'm going to give an example. The first time I bought my property, I had to have a down payment. Now, for my new purchases, the majority, I'm almost putting nothing from my pocket. I'm just refinancing and taking equity out of things that I already paid, and I'm using that for the new purchase. Again, your financial capacity is going to need to be able to take all of that debt, but if it can, with time, you end up buying without needing to take money out of your pocket.
So many amazing tips that we're going to get here with Catalina Camacho. Thank you so much for this episode, because we keep learning and everything is gold.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining me again. And thank you, Rasco, for the production.
Yes.
And we're going to see you again next Thursday, 7:30-ish p.m. Don't forget that if you have any questions or you have any subjects that you would like us to discuss, just send me a message, post it on the live that I'm gonna publish, or send me a DM and we'll gladly